Hello mummies, friends and family, Dumelang.
Every voice make a choice, noise, follow the flame. Gonna be hard. Come together, feeling fine. Everybody.
My son had pertussis very early after he was born. So what is pertussis? Firstly, I googled it up quickly. It says here on Google that it is a highly contagious airway infection that primarily affects children. Treatment should be from medical professionals, often requires lab tests, can last several months or years, usually preventable by a vaccine, and it's transmitted through indirect contact. Also, it may be dangerous or life-threatening. I actually remember googling it and seeing that it's life-threatening, and I stressed. I immediately thought death. But basically, pertussis is something that's also known as a whooping cough, so a very severe deep cough. I'll just tell you the story of him having pertussis basically up to his recovery. So what happened was, after I gave birth, everything was fine. I gave natural birth. He was fine. Nothing was wrong with him. In fact, he was my only child that never had to stay in hospital longer after birth, due to maybe jaundice or he's underweight or anything like that. So I was very happy because I could finally get to not worry about my baby being hospitalized. So when we went home, everything was fine. We had the 3-day checkup. He was still fine. I never really noticed much, but he did have now and then where he would sort of like he's yawning, but the yawn is like a little bit longer. So I never really paid attention to that, but I do remember when we had the 3-day checkup, the person who saw him, the pediatrician, was actually the very same pediatrician that basically birthed him. It was the exact same doctor that that saw him after birth. So 3-day checkup, I tell the doctor that, you know what, I'm noticing that whenever he yawns, it seems like the yawn lasts very long and it's very deep. So the doctor said, okay, that's probably normal. You know, when kids are still small, they're still finding their breathing patterns and stuff like that. So there's nothing to worry about, but I should monitor him. So then that was fine. And then through around about the 2nd week, I started to notice that the yawns were getting longer, but he was fine. He seemed to be fine. And also it would happen maybe just once or twice a night. So then 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then around 5 or 6 weeks, I think, again I go to the doctor. I'm like, you know what, something is wrong here. I'm really noticing something. Luckily, on the day that I went to the doctor, I think it was actually his 6 weeks appointment, yes. Luckily, on the day that I went, he had an episode. He had that yawn, or now I know it wasn't a yawn. So when the doctor then saw that, because I had been explaining it, the doctor saw that and he said, oh, you know what, let us admit him. He said, I'm not sure what it is. At that time, he wasn't really diagnosed yet. He said, let's admit him and let's monitor him overnight. So he was then admitted and he was monitored overnight. At first, the doctor said it was something, but it wasn't pertussis. I can't remember what he said it was. So we were in hospital for about a week or so, and he was basically on drips and on oxygen during that time. Then he started to recover and he was fine, and we went back home. But a few days later he started to get sick again, and now the episodes were getting longer and stronger and worse, and he would just go you know, like it would just last much longer. So the episodes were getting longer, and I would call the doctor and say, you know what, these episodes are getting longer, what is happening? And the doctor said, just give it time, he'll get better. I remember they prescribed things like cough medicine and stuff like that, and it's stuff that for a small child, a child under 3 months usually doesn't drink any kind of medication unless they're critically ill. So he continued to have those episodes. They really scared me. Honestly, I couldn't sleep. I was not sleeping at all. I'd spend the nights staring at him, because every time he had an episode, I always just had an urge to lift him up, because I could tell that he's not comfortable in his breathing. So I wanted him to just sit up straight and breathe. So I'd spend a lot of nights just holding him, or he'd sleep a lot on my chest. One day again, I took him in. I told the doctor, please just check him, do some blood tests, do more, please. I took him to the doctor. The doctor basically, at this point I think he was about 2 months now. The doctor took some tests, and yeah, he just took tests on that day, and then he checked him out and he said he seems really fine. So we came back home that very same day. On the day that we came back home, I remember on the day I had to pass by my cousin's house. So I passed by her house and I was with baby, and while we were there, we were in the car. It was just I think I was dropping off something or collecting something, so we didn't even leave the car. We were still in the car. She came to me to the car, and while my cousin and I were talking, baby just started having an episode, and my cousin was like, what is going on? And I said, this happens every single day. It's even scarier at night, and it's starting to happen more frequent now. It's happening maybe 3 times during the day and 3 times at night, so we're looking at 6 times in 24 hours. And my cousin was basically shook, and she said, you need to take this seriously. And I said, I'm from the doctor, you know, we were hospitalized. She knew. She even came to visit us one of the days that we were in hospital. So then I went home. I was also going to my grandmother to fetch my other kids on that day. So after I left my cousin's house, I went to my grandmother to fetch my other kids, and when I got there, we actually got off the car and got inside to sit with my grandmother a bit. While we were sitting, he was actually sleeping, and in his sleep he started having an episode. And that day I picked him up, and you know how sometimes a baby is small enough that you can put him in one hand and they lay facing downwards, and then with the other hand you can pat his back. So when he had his episodes, that's what I would do. The doctor did suggest that I do that, and at the time I was obviously also watching a lot of YouTube trying to figure out what's wrong with my baby, but I couldn't really find anything. So on that day that I was at my grandmother's house, my grandmother also really panicked. My grandmother was like, no, you have to go back to hospital, you have to take that child back to hospital, because clearly this child was supposed to be admitted again. So when we went, so then I decided I'm not going back to that doctor. I feel like he doesn't really get it, or he's not taking this seriously. So I decided to call one of my aunts who's in the medical field. She's a doctor, just not practicing anymore, and I decided to call her because I knew that she knew somebody who's also quite close to the family who is a pediatrician. So I decided to call her and ask her if she can help me book an appointment with that lady that I knew, but I didn't know her very closely, so I couldn't call her directly, and I didn't know where she was practicing from. So then I called her, and she said it's fine, she'll help me book that appointment, and she did it very quickly. The next day my appointment was booked. Then I went there to that hospital, and when we got there, I saw a doctor, and doctor said, turns your baby has, and in fact she said before when I was explaining, she said before that she's suspecting that it's Pertussis, but the test results are going to be available soon. I should just wait. So I waited almost 2 or 3 hours. I don't know, it took a while. The blood test results came back, and when they got back, indeed it was Pertussis. So then she said, you have to be admitted. So, and you know, the weirdest thing was when I went there, I had already packed everything. I went there with the mindset that I'm going to be admitted, with the mindset that I'm not going home, I'm not going back home. I cannot stand another night with this child, that they need to see what this child does. So we went to then from the what are they called, where they practice, they're practicing rooms. Then we went into the hospital, the other side of the hospital, to the reception to fill out forms and be admitted. When we were at the reception, my baby had an episode like no other, like he had never had before, and everything stopped. All the other people, all the other patients that were also being admitted and filling out forms, everybody was looking at us. People wanted to take him from me because he turned blue in the face. He was pretty much out, and that's something that always happened, that he would turn blue in the face, but it would happen maybe for 6-7 seconds, because I started counting how long it's happening. But it went on for literally almost 2 minutes, if not exactly 2 minutes or more. But also I could be wrong, because those moments do tend to feel like they last forever. So then they immediately booked us in, like everything was rushed. He was taken to go get oxygen, and we then were admitted into the pediatrics ward. And I can't really remember exactly how long we were there for, but I remember one night when things took a really bad turn. That night, it was around 3 a.m. So obviously I was like a prayer warrior of notes during that time. I was praying hard every single day. 12 o'clock, 3 a.m, 5 a.m, I was just on prayer mode day and night. And so after we were admitted, that one night, it was maybe by now 3 or 4 nights after we had already been admitted. On that night, he had again, now this was the actual worst episode. Hey, that night, yo, I had just had my 3 a.m. prayer actually, and after praying, I decided to look at him, just check if he's breathing, everything is fine. And shortly after that, he was fine. And then shortly after that, a nurse came in to give him his nebulizing stuff. While that nurse was there, he started having an episode. He was blue in the face. It was a disaster. The nurse called another nurse, the other one called another one, the other one called another one. There was at this time basically 5 of them surrounding him. So it was my bed here and his bed here, and they stood in the center surrounding him so that I couldn't see anything, and he was on the other side. And they worked on him, resuscitated him. The other one was even like, I start like talking to him, like, come back baby, don't, like, just talking to him. And then the other one was trying to comfort me, because then I started breaking down. I started crying. I cried. I was sure that he was leaving, that he had left actually. While they were doing that, there's another nurse. She seemed to be very educated about what Pertussis is, and I think she had a lot of experience with it, because even when she used to come in, her shifts were at night, and whenever she would come in, she would tell me, this thing normally gets worse before it gets better. She would really educate me a little bit deeper about it, and more than all the other nurses actually. And so she said to me, don't worry, while the others were busy, she was telling me, don't worry, he's going to be fine, he's not going to die, you don't have to cry, he'll be fine. And then he came back, yeah, I started crying. He started crying. He actually would cry a lot after those episodes. I suppose he really was in pain. He came back to life. They pretty much had to counsel me for a few more minutes that night. He went back to sleep, and I was still in shock. I was still in really deep shock, and I was still crying, and I was a bit of a mess, you know. And so they stayed, one of them stayed a little bit longer to talk to me and help me be okay. I ended up not sleeping the rest of the night, obviously just sitting there and staring at him. And then after that night, things just started getting better and better. His episodes started to last a shorter time. They also decreased in quantity, so if he was having 6 episodes in 24 hours, now he would have 3. By the time we left, he really didn't have any episodes at all, and I was also comfortable with leaving. I had told myself that I'm not leaving that hospital until he has no episode at all. And it was quite a sad time also because he was not even allowed visitors. The room that he was in, he was not allowed visitors, because if somebody comes with a flu and on top of his pertussis he has flu, you know, he just was not allowed to see people. So I was mostly alone. It was either me or his dad, or just both of us at the same time, and that's just how it was. So it was quite a sad-ish time, but obviously, you know, with cell phones I spoke to family quite frequently. So yeah, that is my story with my child having pertussis. I really thought he was dead that night, and for a long time I struggled to get over it. I think as a parent, you know, when you're dealing with a sick child, you just never know, you know. And I struggled with the fact that what if it resurfaces again and he gets sick again, and this time it's worse. But that never ever happened, and till today he's a big boy, he's fine. He obviously doesn't even know. He once struggled to breathe and went through that. But I, on the other hand, will never I'll never forget. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please remember to subscribe to the channel if you made it this far. I love you all so much. Bye. Hey mummies, I just wanted to say, always trust your instinct when it comes to your babies and the things that you may notice about them when they're ill. I know we trust doctors a lot, but sometimes doctors don't know as much as you do as a mother, and they never really understand what you go through. We all know how sickness tends to get worse at night, and the doctors are usually not there to see that and see what it is that you see. So I would like to encourage you to trust what it is that God has blessed you with, and that is a powerful instinct to know how to save your child from anything. Another thing I would like to say is hold on to prayer and never stop praying. I cannot stress enough how much prayer helped me through all of the moments that I've had. If you've seen some of my other videos, you may notice here and there that I have experienced quite a big fair share of having children being ill and being hospitalized for many different things over the past couple of years. I am finally at a place where my children are fairly healthy and I don't get random surprises. For a very long time, I blamed myself and wished I had been more observant or trusted my instinct sooner, because maybe his illness wouldn't have been as severe. To any mom that has lost a child to severe illness, please know that it was not your fault. It was merely God's timing. Thank you guys so much once again for watching this video. Bye.